Hey everyone, Dr. Z, welcome to the show. VP Vinay Prasad back in the house. What's up, Doc?
It's good to be back.
Dude,
good to be back.
It's not good for me to be back. I'll tell you why, man. So I went and got Moderna dose 2 yesterday, 4 weeks apart. And I'm like, the first one was a piece of cake. Little sore arm, little Fauci ouchie, they call it. I don't know why they're giving Fauci credit for the vaccine, though.
I know, he didn't really do too much.
Not that much. So the Fauci ouchie, then I get this one. Okay, I get it at noon. By about 8 p.m., I'm getting ready to go to, put the kids to bed and do all this. I start feeling terrible. Like my arm is throbbing, my head starts hurting, and I start having chills. And I'm like, oh, here we go. Number 2, dude, all night awake.
Wow.
Just febrile 1015, like just achy. And it's like having a bad cold or a flu without any of the congestion or cough.
I see.
But the thing is, so much of it is so all day today too, same thing. Right now I feel like crap. But it's framed in your mind as, oh yeah, my immune system is kicking ass right now. Like the first one got kind of primed it, and now the B cell clone army is like dropping hella cytokines everywhere. So the thing is clearly not a placebo.
You got the real stuff.
Yes.
They kept it cold. They kept it the right temperature.
That's right.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, gently warmed over butane or something. This is a real thing.
There was no drops in the cold storage. Yeah, that was the real stuff. So, your experience is like so many other doctors. I see them go and they tweet about dose 2, known for, a fraction of people having these kinds of adverse events. And some people have even said that, like, healthcare workers who get the second shot should get a paid day off work the day after.
Interesting. Yeah. CNN just did a piece because so many people are complaining they're getting the second shot, and they had to do a piece on why it's worse for the second shot, this sort of immune priming and all that. And, again, I'm so grateful to be in a position
That's right.
to be suffering these symptoms. So we'd scheduled to come here, and I was like, so VP, there's a couple possibilities. This is the vaccine because of temporal correlation, the fact that I have no other exposures, or I have full-blown COVID. Do you want to just roll with this? And you're like, oh, yeah, of course.
I'm pretty confident it is the vaccine.
Yes,
yeah.
It sure seems to be. That's the science of it. Now, you had one dose and had bad symptoms, right, so far?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I don't want to go too public with. No, I'm happy to. Yeah, no, I suffered some adverse events. I'm not known for being a complainer. Except maybe I am though. I don't know. Except on this show. But yeah, no, I felt the AEs. I felt it. I knew I got something.
Yeah.
It wasn't nothing. I got something, and I felt it, and I had a little difficulty sleeping, and I had, as many described, the sore arm.
Right.
It's quite sore actually. I couldn't even lay on it to sleep. I had to sleep on the other arm. Yeah, I think they're not trivial side effects. However, the benefit is vast. It's a great benefit. So I'll take it any day of the week.
Yeah, and you got to think, the amount of immunogenicity of this thing, just judging by how I feel right now, I feel like I have a flu, which means I'm getting the interferons and the cytokine response and everything that would go with that, minus the actual infection. Like, that's the brilliance of these things. Now, but this actually segues perfectly into a recent piece you wrote. So, and I've been getting this question a lot. People are saying, well, we shouldn't start schools until we get kids vaccinated.
That's the newest thing, yeah. So first it was we shouldn't start schools until they're ventilated, until everyone has masks, and then it's until the teachers are vaccinated, and until the kids are vaccinated, and then maybe it's just we shouldn't have schools at all. I don't know. The new world, we all learn from books and learn on the go.
Keep moving the goalposts, until the teachers union over here is just like, excellent. So,
hey, they'll be 18 eventually, so they won't need school. They're all going to grow up soon.
You know what? Exactly. It's just like surgeons say, all bleeding stops.
Eventually.
All schooling stops eventually. Right, eventually. So you wrote a piece talking about that. I'd love you to walk us through what you think about kids and vaccines, because I think this is a good discussion to have.
Yeah, and I guess it fits with your experience. I think, the title of my piece is entitled something like "Kids Can't Wait for a Vaccine to Go Back to School," or they needn't wait. And I guess I come at it in a few directions. One, a practical question, which is, let's say they were to wait. How long might they wait? And the answer is, Pfizer, the emergency use authorization allows people 16 and above to get the vaccine. We have ongoing clinical studies that have enrolled down to 12. I have found an article where Tony Fauci is quoted as saying that if those are positive, they're going to look to 9. And if those are positive, they're going to look below 9. And so what we're talking about in another article that appeared in The Economist is realistically, for younger kids, we're talking 2022. And 2022 is, last I checked the calendar, a ways away. It's a ways away.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that is just going to take a while. The next thing is, what is the actual risk to children, particularly younger children, particularly children under the age of 16 or 15? And we know in a couple of lines of evidence, there's a nice paper in JAM on the fall that looked at the risk of death to a young child, 5 to 15, who passed away from SARS-CoV-2, and the answer was about 1 in a million kids passed away from SARS-CoV-2. Now that's an unfortunate endpoint, but to put it in perspective, in that same age group, the risk of suicide in non-COVID times is typically 10 times higher. So yes, kids are not invincible from it, but realistically, their chance of dying from SARS-CoV-2 is not out of the ballpark with other respiratory viruses in that age group.
And one thing we want to say about that is, when you talk to doctors who care for these children that are in ICU, almost invariably the children have other conditions, whether it's severe obesity, diabetes, other issues that put them at higher risk. So you could almost start to think, well, those are the higher risk children, and other children are maybe less high risk for that.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that the other piece of evidence that will support that claim is the New England Journal letter of the Swedish experience, which was 1.95 million kids, 15 ICU visits. And most of those kids did have a comorbidity or another predisposing condition. So what's the probability a healthy kid will get sick and succumb to this virus? I think we're talking very, very low. The other line of evidence, I think, is the IFR studies. So there's been some meta-analytic estimates of the infection fatality rate. So of all the people who've been infected, the probability one would die. When we're talking about 10-year-olds, the estimates that are in this paper is something like 2 in 100,000. So that's of 100,000 kids infected, maybe 2 would pass away. And to put that in perspective, when you talk about people who are 80, it's 7,500 times as much.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're talking about 20% in that group, right?
Right. How do you think it relates to maybe influenza mortality in children, just as a reference point?
You're never allowed to say that word, my friend.
Yeah. No, you can't compare. We're going to get banned.
SARS-CoV-2 cannot be compared to any other thing
disease
on the planet.
No, except for SARS-1.
A SARS-1 maybe, and maybe MERS.
MERS, right.
But if you go beyond that, you're not. No, but I think the reality, I think you make a fair point, which is that I know it has been controversial when people have said it, but I think when we're talking about children, it is generally not controversial to argue that SARS-CoV-2 in kids is roughly the same as influenza, maybe even less severe than influenza. Seasonal influenza in kids. That's not to say that it's not a serious virus. So, we've got to be very clear. When he's talking about a 7,500 times increased risk in 80-year-olds, we're talking about, maybe 1 in 4 80-year-olds passing away with the virus who get it. That is like unlike any influenza. That's really, really severe. But we have to have the perspective to recognize that this is something with the steepest age gradient I think anyone has ever seen. And by that I mean it's far more deadly in older people than it is in younger people.
And so one thing, because as I talk to you now, like my head is throbbing, like I feel febrile. Imagine you do this to hundreds of thousands of children. Just by sheer, happenstance, you're gonna have a certain number of complications just in terms of febrile complications. Can you talk? Did you talk about that in your article?
I think I did. So I guess we're building these pieces of evidence. So one piece of evidence is like, look, if you're going to wait for schools to reopen, you're going to wait a long time. And every day you wait, you're losing something. There's a trade-off. The next piece of evidence is that the risk to kids absolutely is very, very low. And it's within the realm of risks we accept when we send our kids in 2017, 2016. Those are the kinds of risks you run when you send your kid to school. They could get into traffic fatality on the way to school. They could die of the flu.
Meningitis.
There's so many risks to children the moment they set foot outside the door.
Wedgies.
It's
swirlies. Devastating.
Only to us nerds.
But. I know. See, maybe guys, I'm playing just revealing my hand a little bit here. That
it's TMI.
It's TMI.
Yeah. So those are the two pieces. And then the point you're making here, I think, is a good point, which is we do not know what the side effects will be in kids. We just don't know because we don't have the data yet. And there are differences around dosing, and there are differences around how kids may tolerate it. They may tolerate it differently, maybe even better. It's possible. But let's assume they tolerate it the same as they tolerate Moderna dose 2 in adults, the same sort of rates of AEs. I think we're talking, and I think I documented the piece, we're talking about, grade 3 fevers, which is like, I think 104 degrees for less than 24 hours, and grade 4, which is 104 degrees for 2 days, for more than 24 hours. We're talking about, of 1 million kids, you might take that risk of death from 1 And let's say you drop it to 0 because there's a 95% reduction in COVID and there appears to be almost a full protection against severe COVID. So let's say to save that one life, you got to inoculate 1 million kids with vaccination to save one life. And you're talking about maybe 14,000 kids suffering grade 3 fevers and maybe 880 suffering grade 4 fevers, which is, more than one day. And I guess when you add in the myalgia, when you add in the arthralgia, when you add in the sort of headache, the fogginess, all these things, I mean, I think you have a tough sell. You have a tough sell to parents. You have a tough sell to the public to tolerate that level of side effects to avert a very rare outcome. This is assuming that it does the same thing.
Right.
And then the last thing I'd say is, right now vaccinations are authorized. They're not approved. They're emergency use authorized, which is a special pathway of the FDA that allows expedited access to things in chemical, biological, radiologic emergencies. And this is an emergency, no doubt about it. This is the full-blown pandemic. But it's an emergency for adults. Is it really an emergency for children? And I think one might argue, and I'm sympathetic to this argument, that's why I kind of raise it, that the EUA is appropriate for an adult vaccine in the setting of an emergency, but an EUA might not be appropriate for a childhood vaccine given that the risk to kids is so low. Yeah. And if that is true, and the FDA pursues a more aggressive regulatory standard of traditional approval, that will require further evidence and further delay the time until vaccines are available. So
if you're waiting for schools to open for that to happen, you're going to be waiting forever.
You're waiting for
so that yeah. So we talked about this a little bit, and I think I'm increasingly convinced that we don't need to wait for kids to be vaccinated. It'd be nice to have a lot of adults vaccinated, as many as we can, especially high-risk people, and stratify from there. But kids, Offit, when we were first talking about vaccines on the show early in the pandemic, he said, you better damn well know what your risk-benefit is when you're giving kids, healthy kids, vaccines. And he's spent his life looking at giving healthy kids vaccines. Yes. And so I'll ask him on Friday when he comes on the show what he thinks about this, because he can understand the risk benefit, and as can you, and I think make a compelling case and say, well, how can we think about it? Now, this doesn't mean that if you want to get your kid vaccinated and it's approved, you shouldn't do it.
Oh, of course.
That's fine.
Yeah, I think these are challenges with the path to approval.
Right.
And the difference between authorization and approval, and which is the right regulatory pathway. And I think that I can imagine there'll be people who argue the opposite and say that until the pandemic is under control, it's an emergency in everybody. But I would counter-argue, I would say something like, if there are a big group of adults who are choosing not to be vaccinated, I'm not sure that justifies you calling it an emergency until they have done their due diligence and been vaccinated before you can declare it an emergency for this pediatric group where the risk-benefit profile is fundamentally different.
Yeah, I mean, you have like 40% of nursing home workers declining the vaccine.
I don't know what's going on.
I don't know what's going on.
Maybe, I read something recently where somebody said that, look, you've treated them like shit for so many years. You've treated these workers very poorly. We have to be honest about that. They're underpaid. They're undervalued. These nursing homes represent a failure of our society. It just shows that we're callous towards older people. We push them aside. And they weren't given PPE in the early part of the pandemic. So maybe these are reasons why they might be distrustful.
Yeah. I think, and I've talked about that on the show, definitely. And I have a lot of compassion for that viewpoint. I think if we're being completely blunt, which I'm going to be, you don't have to agree with this. There are a lot of people who work in the nursing home population that are just simply not educated in anything at a high level of science. And so there's a lot of misinformation floating around. They're as vulnerable to it as anyone, and they see complications. They see results of complications in patients that are there. Mm-hmm. So they're more on edge about that. They don't want to be guinea pigs. They've been abused. They're undervalued, underpaid, understaffed. And yet it's the most important population in terms of outcomes.
Yes.
I mean,
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we're talking about 50% of all U.S. deaths are occurring in this setting. And so vaccinating the people who are in that place and the people who provide care, and often these people who work in nursing homes often work in multiple nursing homes, which is, obviously a recipe for potential viral spread between nursing homes. But I think you're right in the sense that you're approaching it with some compassion. You're trying to ask, why might somebody there they're not getting the vaccine because they want to be a bad person, a viral vector. Right. They're not getting the vaccine because of some misunderstanding or some apprehension towards the medical field. Many cases, there may be some basis for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And you can make the same argument from an equity standpoint with African Americans who are very reluctant, more so than other racial groups, to get vaccinations when you have histories of abuse and so on. And so these folks are not behaving irrationally, but we do need to do a better job, I think, of teaching and being compassionate with it. There's so much, man. I mean, and you experience this all the time. We'll talk about this in the latter half of the show, but the amount of shaming and nonsense that goes on from people on social media towards those they feel are not behaving. Like even me just saying, well, I don't know that the nursing home population has the higher level of education that would be an immunologic, like many doctors don't, right? So, but that is a fact. It's probably a fact. I think it's hard to, you can argue it, but I think it's a tough one. But to say, oh, look at this person killing grandma in the nursing home because they're just evil.
That sounds like a good tweet.
Yeah, it's a great tweet.
It's a great tweet.
It's a
You got all the RTs for that. But I think you point to something that's very real, which is there are many people who I believe's heart is in the right place on the other side of the issue. They're the anti-vaxxers. They don't like the anti-vax messaging.
Right.
And their heart is in the right place. I mean, they really want to persuade people to see, I think, the wisdom of some of these strategies, particularly this strategy. But there is an empirical question, which is separate from intention, which is that how do you effectively persuade people?
Right.
And, as much as we wish everyone used empathetic, consistent messaging, the reality is when I look on Twitter, and I've gotten myself in trouble for pointing this out to others, that they're throwing a lot of grenades. They're just saying you're stupid, you're dumb, you're an idiot, you're killing people, you're, and other derogatory names. And I guess I don't know this to be true, but I suspect it, that being insulted is not a good path to bringing somebody into the fold and into sort of thinking about the communal sense of good here.
It's really not. And what's interesting is I've had to do a lot of soul searching on this one because as a comedian-ish,
Well, you are,
sometimes,
as a funny person.
as funny haha or funny. But
We're laughing with you. Don't
there
worry.
you go. Oh God, I hope so. So we've done a lot of pretty hardcore vaccine stuff.
Yes, and hit on them hard,
my
yeah.
producer dresses up in a wig and pretends he's anti-vax Janet and comes at me with crazy stuff. Now that's funny, but that all that serves to do is rally our own anti-vax tribe.
Right.
It doesn't convince anyone on the fence. If anything, it infuriates them and entrenches them in the fact that we don't understand, we're not listening to them, we think we're better than them, all the other stuff. Now, what I've been getting lately, because I've changed my approach, mainly because I've awakened a bit to the why of the anti-vaccine sentiment, and I understand it and more than I did. It's hard still for me because I'm so conditioned in the science, right? Which can be a blind spot too. But now I get messages saying, hey, you know what I love? I wasn't going to take this vaccine. I am now because
because of you.
calmly, it's our show and the guests and the back and forth where they say, you seem to not have a massive dog in the fight beyond trying to do the right thing. You're patient and you explain it. And you explain why you think it's rational to not want to get the vaccine, which means let's talk about why we can convince you to do it. And that's very different than what I used to do because, again, who was I convincing? I'm not going to convince a delusional 2% on either side of this thing. So you got to shoot for these people that are like, man, I'm so confused. And I have plenty of reason to distrust this. I mean, everything from mask flip-flopping early on, which we've talked about, and all the other public health stuff.
But I think you're onto something, which is that, I will admit that my own thinking on the art of communicating publicly on these social media forums has evolved over time. Naturally, if it didn't evolve, that would say something's wrong with me.
Right.
I think the discussion we just had about the pediatric vaccine is actually quite pro-vaccine, and I'll tell you why. For people to perceive you as somebody who is impartially adjudicating the risk and benefit profile of a vaccine, I think you have to be honest about the fact that may vary by age, right? And if your stance is an extreme stance, as I think many people are on the internet, which is that everyone should get the vaccine right away and it should all go through the same authorization pathway, this EUA, irrespective of age, I think that reveals potentially a blind spot in your reasoning, that maybe it is not the same in a 5-year-old as it is an 85-year-old. And acknowledging that is not, it's just to show that this is a nuanced and complex issue, and that's how you ought to think about it.
Yeah, but if we're talking about the coddling of the American mind, there's only good people and bad people,
only good
Vinay, so
people and
you
bad
either stake
people.
out. And actually, this gets to the point. Like, I would not trust someone who was exclusively party line on anything, which is why I just hate it when politicians. I mean, that's why like McCain was popular.
I think
right?
he was, yeah, for this
because
reason.
he would be like, yeah, I'm not just like straight going down a ticket. I'm saying, yeah, I think this and I think that. I'm an issues person and I look at things rationally. Lovely. Why can't we all do that? And the same with vaccines. Like Offit, early days, like this is a pro-vaccine dude, but he's like, we got to really be careful with giving healthy people.
I think he's like known for being the pro-vaccine dude,
yes,
right? Yeah,
he's the guy that like they throw, like a fur protester throws blood at. Like he's the guy the anti-vaxxers want.
And didn't he write that book about that? Like one of the all-time great vaccinators in history.
Yeah.
One of his first books. Yes.
Yeah.
One of his first
Maurice.
Books. Maurice. Yes. Maurice. Yes.
Yeah. God.
Hellerman, right?
Hellerman. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I always. He's done a documentary too that at some point I've shared a link to, but. And he's a very rational guy, but of course he has a bias because he's a scientist. But at the same time, he's able to go, well, you trust him.
I'll give you another example that I got myself in a little bit of trouble about, which I think, but I don't think I ought to be in trouble, is, my piece that we talked a little bit about last time, which was 2 vaccines, 14 days asymptomatic. You can take a liberty in life. You can go hug your grandmother, and you said you were going to go hug your mom.
Right.
And you're probably still looking forward to doing that because you just get your
and they just got vaccinated.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Oh,
luckily.
good.
Yeah.
That's a good feeling.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
Way better feeling than getting vaccinated yourself.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, you're just like, oh, I would, suck the
Yes, you'll suck the mRNA right out.
toxic mRNA.
and give it to your give it to your mother.
Yeah, exactly. And then she'll anaphylax from the blood type incompatibility.
But it just shows how much
I
that's
care.
true love.
Yeah, it's true love.
That's true love. You really care.
I'm willing to anaphylax my poor mom.
But one of the criticisms I got about that piece was, I mean, there were numerous and vociferous criticisms. That's always the case. Many of which I think are deeply inappropriate, like ad hominem personal comments, or the allegation that somehow I have some like perverted motive, like I want people to die or something.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Like that's what I'm in the business of. Yeah.
Right,
like,
exactly. Is it, they think you're a butthead for all the wrong reasons.
Yes, I know.
Like you're
right.
a butthead for all these other reasons, but they're like, well, no, he wants to murder people. No. That's not why I'm a bad person.
Yeah. Right.
There's
I mean,
a whole other list of things.
I'm
right.
sure you could find some reasons.
Right.
But but I think. The hardline view that some espouse that after vaccination, quote, nothing changes, you ought to social distance and not meet up with anybody and not go on dinners and you ought to, not meet other vaccinated people for a dinner at your house. That is a view that some espouse. I push back a little on them on Twitter and I say, what criteria do you want to see before you will relax? And some of them said, well, I know you're wrong, but I can't actually delineate what is the criteria I want to see. And I was like, if you can't delineate what the criteria you want to see is, you're not arguing in good faith. You don't know what you're talking about.
Emotional arguments.
Yeah, in my opinion. So you're waiting until Med Twitter tells you it's fake. Okay,
that's
fine.
what it is. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tribal badge of identity, which we've talked about. I think to resist, you either super fearmonger or you're super denial, and your avatar is either a bunch of masks. Like now, it's like 12 masks.
That was a whole nother.
Man.
So I don't know how we got on this, but obviously there was that quote by Fauci that said, if one mask is good, 2 is better.
Right.
There's a study from a few weeks. I mean, I think it was a couple of weeks ago where I think it was a JAMA Journal Medicine study that looked at, if you wore a second mask, it would improve the fit and filtration, and they tracked it with some particle size. But that's rather indirect evidence of the question, which is that if you made this a mandate, would it change population outcomes?
Yeah.
Yet for a moment everywhere on the internet, 2 mask was the craze.
Oh yeah.
If one is good, 2 is better. And I remember somebody said, it's attributed to Fauci. The quote is, it's just common sense to wear 2 masks.
Right.
If it's just common sense, where was this common sense 10 months ago, my friend? This is not common sense. This is something new.
Yeah. You know what's funny is all these conservatives were putting up avatars with like 20 masks on, like just stacked up like
trolling.
this. Yeah, they're trolling.
But they found an
They're very good trolls. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they found a legitimate place to poke fun.
Yeah.
But now then Mike Osterholm went and he said that, he disagreed with the recommendation. And then I think Fauci, 5 days later, he walked it back in an interview where he said there's no data.
Osterholm's never been a big fan of public masking, I don't think, to a high degree. Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, I'm curious to know. I'd love to talk to him about it, but I guess I don't. I've read his letter. He had a letter in the New England Journal, so I get a sense of where he's coming. But I don't know exactly where he falls.
Right. I think his thing is, this is largely, aerosolized around the sides of the mask. You're not gonna stop it with these kind of third grade cloth masks.
He's one of those. Everyone needs an N95 kind of people.
Or nothing, or just don't see people.
I see. I see.
Right.
Total. Yes,
Yeah.
I've seen his repeated calls for repeat lockdown. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Well, anyway, so I wrote this thing, and I stand by my article. My article will be, I think, in time it will age well because I think people will see the wisdom in it. And also, I had sent it to so many people who are experts in infectious disease. It'll make your head spin.
Yeah.
And they all support it privately, of course.
Of course. Of course.
But one of the people who was like really harsh with me, said a lot of mean stuff, and I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, well, who's this person? And then, I was like looking through some of the pictures online, and I was like, and this person showed the routine mask that this person favors, and I swear to God, it looked like a trench warfare mask from World War I. I was like, I've never seen anything quite like it was a heavy duty.
Oh,
I'm no expert, but it was a heavy duty
A
mask.
full Darth Vader ventilator mask, right?
It was something like that.
So you're dealing with it's a tribal badge at that point. You can't fight that because you're attacking an identity belief instead of actually arguing rationally science, which honestly, I get a lot of messages after our shows, and I think you do too. Maybe people send you, and they're like, hey, I really like that show. And why did they like it? Because two reasonably calm, incredibly handsome.
They never say that to me.
They've never told me that. No one has ever told me that. And discussing rationally the ins and outs of things without really, getting crazy partisan or angry or anything like that.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm not a partisan. I have no interest in it.
I don't have an interest in it. Yeah,
I have no interest in it. And I guess my interest here is like on these issues. My interest is like I love thinking about risk, and I love thinking about risk on these like low probability events. When we talk about 1 in a million, it's real probability, but it's a low probability. And the human mind is great at distorting such events, either make you think it's zero and neglect it, or make you think it's orders of magnitude larger. Like our brains are good at processing day-to-day risks, the kind of risks like, is it going to rain today? Am I going to, fall down this ravine? Am I going to get food today? They're not great at these kinds of risks, and emotion so often overrides.
That's right, because I think it's limbic. I call it, this is John Haidt paradigm of elephant and rider. So elephant is a risk detector. It's this limbic primitive brain, and it's designed to detect threat. It has a negativity bias, which is why news loves negative. And if it bleeds, it leads, and all that. It's all because that's how they're hacking our own wiring. And the truth is that's how we misestimate risk. So Daniel Kahneman wrote the book Thinking Fast and Slow, and it's really about how we have distortions in our thinking and understanding risk and thinking illogically. So we ought to work on growing our ability to do that. I think that we ought to be teaching kids in school this. We ought to be looking at ourselves. Like I find myself making errors all the time and then noticing it now for the first time. Whereas before you just go with this, and then you go, wait, no, look what I just did. I did appeal to authority. You're noticing all the errors that you're making. And I think that means we have to teach people how to do it, teach ourselves how to do it.
I agree with everything you said, and I'll add on one more thing, which is that when you take people and you put them in a pandemic situation, you exacerbate all these errors, I believe. Like you're taking people, you're depriving them of their social networks, you're depriving them of in-person interactions, you're leaving them in their house, you're often depriving them of childcare or schooling, you're depriving them of a lot of things that play with your mind, make you more anxious, concerned, frustrated, tired, sleep deprived, uncertain about the future, and then you ask them to reason about low probability events, and it's so easy to demonize, to hate, to think this is irrational. But when you really think about the just the raw numbers, you might think about it differently. And so, I don't know, at a time where we needed in-person interaction the most, we have it the least.
I had Judd Brewer, who's a psychiatrist who studies mindfulness and did some of the seminal fMRI studies on monks and stuff who practice advanced meditation. And early on in the pandemic, I had him on, and he said, what we've done here is we've taken a physical contagion, which has risks, which we're overestimating mostly. This was early on when we didn't know entirely. And even then, I think he was right fully. But he said, now there's the social contagion, which comes from we're all locked down and a news anchor can sneeze on your brain from thousands of miles away and infect you with fear. And that changes how you work. So now you're so afraid, you've been conditioned repeatedly. Now VP goes on Twitter and says, actually, once you get this incredibly effective vaccine, which I'm feeling the effects right now.
Right.
Like, you can probably loosen some things with permission of the other party.
Of course.
I mean, come on. It's not like you're going and,
Yeah.
assaulting them. Yeah.
You've invited them to your house for dinner. They're also vaccinated, and
Yeah.
they can say, I'll give you a good example of it. I don't know if we talked about this last time, but I thought about it a little bit more, and I thought about something even more interesting. It was a hospital. This was a trainee emailed me after this, and the trainee said to me that after this brouhaha about what can you do after vaccination, the hospital sent an email to all the trainees, and it said, when you are on lunch, you are not allowed to sit two trainees and have lunch together. You got to either eat lunch apart, go outside, and this is in a East Coast city where it's super cold.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I don't want to. Let's just say this trainee did not appreciate this recommendation, and I don't think the recommendation was strictly adhered to.
Right.
Okay, but this was the recommendation nonetheless. It's the policy that you're not allowed to have lunch together. And I was thinking about it initially, how it's a foolish policy for a lot of reasons. But we talked about it on the last episode. But then I was thinking about even more, and I was like, there's one more reason that's a foolish policy. The hospital can only control the resident interaction while they're at work.
Right.
When they go home from work, they can have dinner together,
Yeah.
and the hospital has no control over it.
Yeah.
So whatever delta is on the policy, whatever benefit the policy provides, it prevents in-person interactions at work that would otherwise not happen outside of work.
Right.
But the reality is, the more you prevent it at work, you may actually increase it out of work.
Push it out of work.
Have more dinners outside of work. And the net result may be, not only is it a policy that robs you of humanity and the one break you get when you're a trainee,
Oh, man.
you really
Such a
want
crucial thing.
Crucial
Look
thing.
forward to it. Yeah.
You look forward to it. Not only does it rob you of all that, but it may not actually even change the interaction frequency, because
Right.
we're just going to do it after work and get a beer.
It's funny that you say that, because when outdoor dining was before they shut it down again in California, I went to an outdoor place with my kids. We were eating there in Redwood City outside. Beautiful. God,
Sinner.
California.
You sinner.
I'm
You
a
horrible-
sinner.
Yeah.
I'm a sinner in the hands of an angry God. And there I am sinning, eating my octopus, which, by the way, I don't eat anymore after seeing My Octopus Teacher on Netflix. You should watch
see.
that. It's
Yeah.
like, oh God, I think that thing is sentient.
It's a smart
and really
animal.
smart, and
Yeah.
actually weirdly
Smart
like,
as cephalopod.
lovey. Like you want to give it a hug, and
see.
then the tentacles will get on you.
I see.
But
So back when you used to eat octopus, yeah.
that's right. So I was eating this octopus with my kids, and I see there's 4 people sitting at an adjacent table, kind of talking loudly at each other, and they turn and go, "Are you Z-Dog?" I'm like, "Yeah, I am."
Wow.
"Oh, we're all residents at Stanford," and so on. "Oh, really? Oh, cool. So you guys like hanging out? How's the COVID numbers?" They're it's busy." "Okay, so y'all are just like all at the table here, no masks, just like shouting at each other." So I'm down with that, but I'm sure this would not be policy at Stanford within the walls of
Yeah, I
Stanford.
suspect
So like
not,
you said,
yeah.
it's the same thing. It's the only time they get to connect.
And for many of us in residency, you know how hard it is. I mean, I don't have
Oh,
to bore
man.
you. And those were the encounters that gave you the motivation to go back the next
Exactly.
day. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get too specific, but I think the takeaway point is that people, if you really think that you're going to vaccinate all these people and their behavior literally will not change, I question your thinking on that.
yeah.
I was like, that's not right. Of course they're going to behave differently. Of course they are.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
You don't understand humans.
You don't understand humans. What are you
I don't know
talking
what you're
about?
talking about.
What are you
and-
talking
and
about?
What I really don't like is the manipulative aspect of it. Well, no, we're going to say this because we know the public will take it this way, and if
don't
we
get
set
me
the bar
started.
here, they'll reach it here. And so I got an invite from CDC to speak about vaccine hesitancy in a virtual thing they're doing. I'm trying to figure out who the audience is, but there was a 95% part of me that just wanted to ghost them. And it was just because I've been so frustrated in general with communication. But then I thought, well, if I ghost them, then I'm not doing my part to actually contribute to the betterment of communication. But
I see.
it's been frustrating.
You don't want to be associated with the CDC
Man,
anymore.
oh, God, it's a stain.
No, they're rehabbing their image.
They are.
Yeah.
Instantly, there were
Instantly,
as soon as the Biden administration started, there were 13 pronouns in every email. I was like, oh, that's an overnight change. But it's amazing how now they are actually reaching out and doing all this. But I guess my question is really, how do we start to have a more rational public health policy? Like, for example, you wrote a piece on lockdowns.
Oh yes, just came
Now,
out.
I imagine this is going to be a controversial piece, because if you say anything about lockdowns that is negative, you're no longer a good liberal. If you say anything about lockdowns that's positive, you're no longer a good conservative. So this is a tribal identity badge.
Well, I hope I will. Well, it'll only be controversial among the people who don't read it, which is probably a fair chunk of people these days. But because the piece actually says the answer is I don't know. That's my answer. I don't know. And I think I start by framing the piece around there are two recent studies that came out, and one says that, one is what is a lockdown? And they define it as universal, unessential business closure and stay-at-home order was the definition that they employed. And one paper said that we looked at these 12 countries or something like that, and we failed to find a benefit from lockdown. And another paper says that there is a benefit. It lowers, R naught by, I forget what it was, like 0.2% or something, lowers not 0.2 of 1 point. So like from 1 to 0.8 or something like that. And I started to think about it, and I actually spent a lot of time thinking about how you would do the research. And the more I thought about it, my head hurt because I realized that, well, how do you define lockdown? You can define it in so many ways.
Wow.
And which countries do you look at? So many. Which regions do you look at? And then you have to make some analytic choices. For instance, one is lag. If I institute a lockdown on Monday, when does it kick in? Does it kick in tomorrow? 3 days from now, 5 days from now, 7 days from now, 9 days from now? You have the choice to lag your model, whatever you want. I started thinking about how you define lockdown, what countries you look at. And then I started thinking about the fact that lockdown's not like an aspirin. A lockdown is different every time you take it. If I give you a lockdown, the first time I give it to you, it might work really good. But if I give it to you again and again and again, there may be diminishing return because you're not participating.
It's tachyphylaxis to lockdowns.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe, and also, and so this is just classic effect modification or interaction. There's some difference between how it works over time. The other thing is, it may work differently if it was deployed recently in Perth, Australia, when there was one case documented, probably a handful of cases not documented, and they want to lock down to go from handful to 0. So that might work, maybe not. But what if the caseload is 1 in 1,000, 1 in 100, as it has been in some U.S. places? A brisk, does it work the same there? I don't know the answer. And this whole essay explores 9 different ways that this is a very difficult question. And the other dimension of this I kind of explore is lockdown's not the only thing we did. We locked down sometimes. We also, I've seen some parks here, they remove every other swing.
Right.
Boom, gotcha, COVID.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Take that. You think you can spread swing to swing?
Oh, hell no.
Hell no, boom.
R naught just went from 1.5 to 1.49999.
We got you.
We
They
got
take the rim off the basketball.
Oh,
Boom.
my.
Yeah, they closed a toboggan track in Canada. I actually don't know what that is, but
A toboggan.
I know what a toboggan is.
Right,
but
right.
Do they have do they have tracks for this?
We're gonna have to. We have a lot of Canadian fans on the show, so
Do we?
they're gonna have to weigh in. They're gonna weigh in. They'll be like, "Hey, it's
really important.
It's
eh?
a real hoser, eh?
That's a real.
Sorry about that,
They're gonna give you a shit. for
Canada. Sorry.
that. I'm gonna put my root sweater on.
Yeah.
Avoid the wrath. But yeah. So I mean, the point I want to make is we've probably done 10,000 different things, maybe more. We've closed things, opened things, had mask rules, inside, outside, kids, young, old, different climates, gatherings. They banned gatherings over 10, over 20, over 50, over 100.
Travel,
border closures.
right?
I mean, so many things have been done. Some of them may do something. Some
Right.
of them may do nothing. But I actually fear that the vast majority of things we've done, we will never know the
We'll
answer.
never know. Yeah.
And so the whole point of my essay is to point out, I have some specific recommendations of how in the future when we deploy things, we got to deploy them in a way that we can learn something. I call this that, we've basically done a multi-trillion-dollar experiment and we have no idea which specific things when work and which things are just things that sap morale and don't get commensurate benefits in caseload reduction. And that's a tragedy. That's not much better than people who lived 500 years ago. They did all this shit and they don't know what works.
Right. I mean, you just do cocaine. There's ghosts in your blood, man. I mean, that was the old doc. There's a meme about that, like old time doc. And it's like, hey, you have ghosts in your blood. Why don't you do cocaine about it? But yeah, no, it's true. And we haven't, it's interesting. You can contrast the vaccine science that's been done, which has been done reasonably well.
I think the best that we've done. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really
with
good.
all these other things.
With all these other things.
Which I actually want to say, I'm not saying I don't believe it works.
Right.
Although I'm willing to say I don't believe cutting every other swing did shit. I'm willing to say that was stupid.
You're going on the record.
I'm going on the
Yeah,
record.
yeah.
The cutting down every other swing didn't do anything.
Right.
That wasn't the place where COVID was gaining ground.
Right.
However, a lot of these things, or possibly the place where COVID was gaining ground,
Mhm.
and possibly your intervention helped. But I don't know. And that means when I don't know, I'm in a very bad spot as a policymaker. When do I deploy it? How do I deploy it? Where does it work? Where doesn't it work? And I actually think we're not going to learn it this year, next year. It'll be
Yeah.
a decade before anyone has any sort of ideas about this. And I don't even think we can study it in the moment. I think that the temperature is too hot. People cannot study this in a neutral way. They're too angry. They're too venomous. They're not there yet. You know.
I'm with you. I mean, I think there are a lot of missed opportunities, but I think it will wake us up, to future approaches when things cool down. Like you said, I think people are just too, like Mr. Gas Mask. That's a lot. Like you're not gonna have a rational conversation.
Mr. Gas Mask needs a hug, but
They need a hug. They need a hug.
Won't let me do it, even if I'm
But
vaccinated.
by the way,
That's
the
challenge about that.
you've seen Hamilton or no?
Yeah, I love it.
Love it, right? So when you were talking about all the essays that you write, I was like, why does he write like he's running out of time? Writing every day and night like he's running out of time. You're basically Hamilton, and I'm your Burr. So I'm thinking, I'm gonna wait.
I feel like you're Lafayette.
Oh, Lafayette.
Yeah.
Your what was it? Imagine your tactical, strategical brilliance. Dun, 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 Lafayette. Dude. Did you see? So it came out on Disney finally, and so the world was watching it.
Yeah, I think I watched it again on Disney Plus.
On Disney Plus, yeah. I saw
It's
it
good.
in Vegas. It was it's such a great.
I think I saw it live once, but I think when I lived in DC, maybe.
Oh, you saw it there, yeah.
Yeah. Terrific show.
Yeah,
Boy,
really
he's
good.
a talented guy.
I mean, Lin-Manuel is. I mean, Moana.
Oh yeah.
He did all the music for that.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just
And,
stop right there.
yeah.
You're welcome.
It's interesting. There are people who do certain lines of work where I bet the ratio of people who like Lin-Manuel Miranda to people who don't like him is probably like 99.999. It's as good as the Moderna vaccine. But when you're in the business of academic ideas in medicine, which I fear is the business that I'm in, that ratio is it's like J&J vaccine. No,
That's right. Yeah. There's a really funny meme where it was like two really ripped black dudes, like abs and everything, and it was like
press release abstract.
This one was actually, it said Moderna, and then another ripped dude, a little slightly smaller, and it said Pfizer. Actually, it was the other way. Pfizer, huge guy.
Yeah.
Moderna, pretty big still, and then this fat Indian dude with a mustache and his gut poking out, and it just said AstraZeneca. With those like aviator glasses.
Well, I don't want to let this myth go out. I will say that they're all out of the park good.
Yeah, out of the park.
Out of the park good. And
Novavax.
They're
Johnson
all
and
good
Johnson.
because obviously the being hospitalized and having severe COVID and death 0, 0, 0, 0,
0. Yeah.
0, 0. So
Yeah.
symptomatic COVID. It is what it is, but what we really want to avoid is the really bad complications.
Right.
And not having to keep that so cold, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's huge. And with J&J, the one dose thing,
It's great.
That's huge.
One dose is good.
It's going to be interesting because they're doing a 2-dose trial to see is it better. But since it's an adenovirus vector, you wonder if people will have an immune response to the vector and won't have a good boost for the second dose. So I'm gonna see what Offit thinks about that.
That's
but
a good question
it's an
for
interesting-
Offit. That's an Offit level
That's
question.
Offit level.
That's
Yeah.
Offit level.
There's there's minor deities, Vinay Prasad.
That's my pay grade, and there's
and then there's
Offit's pay
Offit.
grade.
Yeah, when it
Yeah.
comes to virology. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and and what I like about Offit too is it always feels like it's an Offit fan club when I talk to you. But he for me anyways, because I'm a fanboy. He likes to point out all the times he's wrong, which is
rare.
Often, yeah, it's
rare.
rare for
People don't do
a
that
scientist
these
to do
days.
that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to get Peter Hotez to admit whenever he's wrong. I gotta get him on the show again. The bow tie is very intimidating with Peter, man.
Uh-huh.
These science communicators.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, have you ever been? So you're a really good science communicator. So how? But what's interesting is your audience is actually a higher level audience than say going on the doctors and being like, well, the thing about Botox is right.
Yeah, I mean, all three of them are higher level. All three of them are really, really esteemed people. The three people who listen to my show. No, go on. You're going to ask.
I was gonna say, so have you done any of this bigger media stuff, and what do you think about it?
It's not my interest in life,
Yeah.
and I guess I haven't. I've very rarely in my life I've been asked to do some cable news a bit, and I've always artfully dodged by
Yeah.
pretending to be what my critics say that I don't know anything. No, pretending to be busy or not that I don't feel like. And I guess the reason I dodge is not because I have anything too much against them, but I think I do question the format. I
Yeah.
do question the format. you can't really do justice to something in 5 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever little bit of time they want you to do it. And especially if what you're doing is nuanced, complicated. I'm not drawn to, I mean, there are different types of science messaging. There's saying the thing that most people believe. That's a very popular type of science messaging.
Right.
It's not my interest. In fact, I find it, not that I have anything wrong with it, because I often do believe what most people believe on most issues. In fact, that's, how I drive my car and live my life.
Consensus.
It's called consensus, yeah. So I do agree with most people on most issues. But the things I want to spend my time on thinking about, writing about, talking about are places where I think there's rationality failures, where rational people are slightly on the wrong side of the issue. And I'm drawn to that just because, that's fun. That's try to get people who are rational to come over.
That's I see. So this is an interesting, and this is a little meta conversation on this, because our audience will mostly tune out, but I don't care because it's important to me. So I get invited on these shows all the time. I tell them no, because the couple times I've done it, you're reduced to a soundbite. It feels clownish. You can't get into nuance. Whereas on my show, I control everything.
Yes.
I can say it how I want to say it, and
at the length you want to say it.
At the length, and it is longer. It does take longer to have a rational conversation where rational people might disagree. So it's interesting because Marty McCary, who was on the show yesterday, he's gotten really good at both. So he can go on Fox and be like, well, Britt, the thing about the virus is it's crazy that we're vaccinating such and so and such. But then he'll come here and be like, all right, here's all the data on this, and here's the 20 things. And so he's good at straddling that. And then you have people who will go online and accuse both of us of being attention-seeking, whores. The problem with VP is he's attention-seeking. I'm like, you don't understand attention-seeking. Attention-seeking is going on every single daytime TV show
to say things people already know,
say things people already know,
what the next person
to
said.
appeal to the lowest common denominator and all of that, right?
And then tell some personal story about yourself that may or may not be relevant to the decision at hand, right?
That's right. Now wait a minute. Now you're starting to offend me.
No.
That's all I do on my show. Okay, let me tell you about my shot. All right, it hurts a lot. I have a headache and probably a fever.
That's different. I think.
No, but
we went into some, but and it's also not the venue. But I guess what I want to say about it is. When I grew up in the 1990s, watching a lot of TV, I was, of course, born in the 1980s. And when I grew up in the 80s and 90s and even the early parts of the 2000s, the medium of television was the only medium. I was glued to it. I watched, I learned about so much of how fancy people live from Frasier.
Dude, totally. Or Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. Yeah. With Robin Leach.
Yeah.
And by the way, so I was watching Thundercats, original 1985 Thundercats reruns.
Beautiful.
With my youngest daughter and rediscovering how incredibly cheesy and horrible it was. But we were laughing like
and what is it, Thundercats ho? And they shout
that's right.
Yeah.
Thunder, Thundercats ho.
Yeah,
and Lionel, the lead guy,
no, I don't know this
he has the Sword of Omens.
I know there's a sword involved.
The Sword of Omens can give him sight beyond sight. And so there's a scene where he's like, Sword of Omens, give me sight beyond sight. And he looks through and he sees these mutants showing up. And he's like, mutants? And then he takes his sword down and they're right there. I'm like, what's the point of having clairvoyance? And my daughter started laughing. She's like, what? What kind of telescope is this? Yeah, I don't know.
It's like a very wimpy binocular.
It really is. So you were raised on TV.
Yeah, I was raised on TV. And I guess what I was trying to say was, where I wanted to go with this is to say that I know that there is a place for these kinds of short segment stuff, but to be honest with you, as I've gotten older and as the availability of media has changed, I don't consume any of it.
Right. Me neither.
Maybe I don't go on the show because I don't like the show.
That's what it is.
I don't watch the show. And in fact, I don't even like short interviews. 20-minute interviews, these interviews that a lot of podcasts put out that are highly cut, highly edited.
Too much.
I hate it. I like the raw, long form, 2-hour podcast where they just talk, and the person who is a popular person, it talks so long, they no longer can use their talking points. They have to be real at some point.
That's what it is. It forces authenticity.
It forces it.
And some degree of creation from a void. Like you're just there in a moment creating. That's what I love about it. You're not in this talking. Because that's the thing. You go. I've been on The Doctors a couple times. They actually asked me to kind of co-host for a month.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, no. But the couple times I did it, I did get to actually say what I wanted to say about this concept of Health 3.0, and I felt good about it. But then I did another one where I debated the raw water guy.
I don't
Do you
even
remember?
know
So
this.
this was
Oh,
like
I remember. They were getting all that water
from
like
some well,
yeah,
and they
out in
weren't
the
like
middle of
treating
nowhere.
it right,
Yeah.
and they're like raw water,
Raw
and it's got
water.
natural bugs in it, and so they had me debate
I
this
miss
guy, and
those
it was
days.
just pure theater, and I felt dirty. I felt bad for the guy because the guy was goaded. It was almost like being on Maury and just like they're like fluffing you up, getting you angry. And I get in there
And
on
it's like, and you are the father.
that's right. I'm like, no, exactly. I'm like, listen, Mr. Raw Water, I live in Las Vegas, and he's, oh, you need some of our raw. I mean, it was the stupidest thing. And that's what they do. And then I don't watch that kind of stuff. Just like, social media. I don't use Facebook.
Yeah. You don't use, but you really don't use any of them.
I don't use any of them.
You drop your thing and you go.
And I leave,
and you leave.
and I engage with the audience. That's what I use it for. But I don't use it to like share photos of me and this and that. It's like not what I'm interested in. So what's interesting is now is Facebook's algorithms have gotten such that they're trying to ding you for things other people say in your group. So we have a supporter group. It's paying subscribers. If somebody posts something on there that's misinformation
let's talk
trigger,
about that. Yeah.
right? Then Facebook can dismonetize your entire group and close it down. And this happened to me with no explanation. Suddenly I couldn't access the group and I'm like, what is this? And then it just so happens I have longtime contacts at Facebook, so I can email them and they go, oh, this is crazy. Oh, let's fix that. It was a false positive on our algorithm, whatever. But what happens to the woman who does quilting and this is her sole source of income? She's done. She has no mechanism to appeal. It's crazy.
I think, I don't know, the position we have given these companies is too much. I've written about it a little bit.
Yeah.
I can't speak to political topics because I don't understand them well enough and it's not my domain, but I can speak to scientific topics. And I guess when it comes to scientific topics, you need a scientific academy capable of discussing views that are not held by the majority, that are provocative, controversial. People who hold the majority view can always say that the minority viewpoint is killing people. Because everything in biomedicine is about life or death. So if you believe X helps people and I believe X doesn't help people and I say X doesn't help people, you can say you're killing people and I can say you're killing people, because it's about life or death. And I wonder who ought to be refereeing these things. Should it be the employees of these giant tech companies who may be I want to use the right word. They may often be fresh out of graduate school.
Right.
And that's not bad. Actually, the people fresh out of graduate school are often the most innovative thinkers.
Right.
They're brilliant in many ways. Creativity is probably peaking in those years, potentially.
Yeah, and they haven't been conditioned.
And they haven't been conditioned. They haven't learned the wrong things. But they also, there's some things they don't know, which is they don't have experience. They don't have the wisdom that comes with being in a field for a long time where you see how debates have gone for a long time. So the debate that you and I felt was a fresh debate in 2007 that we were alive for and we saw how people felt about it. And now we know what it's like in 2017, 10 years later. How did that debate play out? And when you don't have that experience of seeing academic debates happen over the course of your career, it's easy to say this is too much, and not realize that in retrospect, some of those things are actually very prescient moves.
Yeah.
So anyway, when it comes to science censoring, I guess I'm troubled by it. I'm troubled by who does it. I'm troubled by this example. I think the word misinformation has been so abused that it actually no longer means anything. I was telling you before we started that somebody didn't like my vaccine article, but they refused to tweet the link. They screenshot a part of it and then they tweet that. And when I confronted this person,
Cowardly.
who I thought was, somebody who believes in Enlightenment values, reason and the ability of the audience to decide who is right, there was kind of an evasive answer as to why they didn't link to it. But one of the commenters pointed out that we don't link to disinformation.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah. And I was like, well, you know what? It's disinformation in your eyes, but you are incorrect, my friend, because it is in fact very correct.
Yeah.
And I think we owe it to people to, I think, more than any belief you believe in, I believe in the value, allowing people to use their brains to figure out what's right or wrong.
Right.
And that means Facebook can't be trigger happy with this algorithm.
Right.
That means people should actually give the link to your opponent's argument if you're going to debate them.
Yeah. It should, that's the simplest thing. Put a link. Hey, there's an opposing view here. That's fine. They did that on a shirt I posted. We sell these alt middle shirts, and we have a shirt that it says vaccinated and it's got a 5G tower and all this. So what happened was someone got in Twitter prison for even mentioning the shirt.
Really?
Yeah, because it said 5G in vaccine, and that was all it took to trigger the algorithm to go, misinformation. I'm like, this is a pro-vaccine, tongue-in-cheek joke shirt.
I saw somebody had a shirt that said, "Don't worry, I'm vaccinated." But like now with the new messaging, they'd be like, but still following all the
Still have 4 masks on. Right.
Every precaution I otherwise would follow.
That's right. I guess we cut out every other swing.
I guess to me, the most disingenuous part of this debate was, we know a lot of doctors in our lives.
Too many, I would say.
Yeah, too many.
Way
That's the
too many.
problem. That's bad dinner party.
It is terrible.
Everyone thinks they know every damn thing.
Oh God!
But
and it always goes to medicine.
Always goes to medicine. Well, sometimes I like, but
me too.
I don't know anybody who's practicing what they preach on this issue. That's what gets me every time.
Yeah, no. That's the thing. I don't know if it was you I was talking to about this, where we say, oh, we're talking about what we're saying we're doing on Twitter, and the virtue signaling of the 20 masks and the avatar, but then they're going and doing the opposite. I mean,
I know.
And it's because it's, again, like, I think they're using their own calculation
Of risk benefit.
which is what you would want them to do.
And one of the things that is a benefit is the benefit of human connection.
Right.
Which it turns out is a real thing. It's a real thing.
That, and it's hard to quantify.
Yeah.
Right.
But what is the price of, your parents are they're in their 80s, right?
Yeah. My dad is, yeah.
What's the price of hugging your mother?
Yeah.
It's worth a lot of money.
It's worth, and
it's worth a lot of stuff to a lot of people.
The parents are conditioned in fear now. Like, they're nervous even after vaccinations. Should we all be wearing masks? Should we? And I'm like, well, we got to understand risk in the end.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is, like, how bad I feel right now after the second vaccine. Like, I don't want COVID. Like, imagine what COVID is like. Like that
rough haul.
Yeah, I'm telling you guys right now, if you can get the vaccine and you're in line, in the right part in line, go get the vaccine, because you do not want.
You don't want COVID. No, of course
you don't
not.
want.
It's
No.
terrible.
Now what's interesting is even one of our supporters. We were doing a show the other day. Their child diagnosed with MIS-C, and got IVIG and all that, and it's interesting. So it's a rare thing, but when you have a pandemic, you still see this stuff, and then it conditions you, right? You're like, well, I don't want my kid to get MIS-C, even though the risk calculation technically is not very high.
Very similar to the point in the Height book about how at a time where child abduction was dropping to record lows,
right,
parents were most unwilling to let their kids walk to playgrounds alone. A lot has changed about how the risks that parents are willing to let children take.
Yeah.
I'm sure when my parents grew up in the 50s and 60s, to when I grew up in the 80s and 90s, to now, 2020, where the risk is very different.
Yeah, it's much lower. You're not sitting in the back of a station wagon without a seatbelt. Everything's gotten safer. I mean, it's Pinkerism, right? It's like Steven Pinker said,
Yes.
The Enlightenment now. Things are getting better, yet we don't feel that way. Largely because I think we have media that does that, and our own, the way we're wired is to detect downside and fear the risk and threat detection.
That's funny you say that about station wagons, because when I was growing up, we had a rule: seatbelts in the front seat. But in the back seat, obviously, you didn't need them.
You're safe.
You're safe,
right.
Obviously.
There's a seat in front of you.
Although we literally got in a car accident when I was a young kid, and I was in the back seat, and I ended up on the windshield.
Oh,
Boom.
my God.
And we still didn't wear it, so we still didn't learn our lesson. We still didn't learn. And it just goes to show.
Well, they just had those lap belts back then, too, and those are just cut you right in half.
I don't think that anything will be saved. Yeah.
No, yeah,
those
exactly.
Lap belts, yeah.
Oh,
that was another interesting. Yeah, they didn't believe in the shoulder harness in the back seat.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating. The world gets safer, and yet we feel the opposite. Now we have big problems, right? There's huge problems, but I don't know, man. Optimism is warranted.
Yeah.
Like, look at this pandemic, dude. It's been a shit show, but we got the 5 vaccines.
I know.
Of ridiculous efficacy.
I wouldn't have guessed it.
Nope.
I have to say, I would have been a little critical that it would come so quickly, and as efficacious as it has been.
Right.
But you know what? People find a way to be pessimistic about it. Every day I read the paper, it's like it's not 100%. I was like, oh my God, what do you want, man?
Just say the V word, variant,
Oh,
and the press just loves it. They're like, wait, we're running out of. You can just imagine Mr. Burns with his cat, like, just sitting there. Well, Smithers, it looks like the pandemic's going a little too well. What's new? Variants? Oh, excellent, variants.
And then
Vaccine
even though
escape.
Yeah, they talk about it, and I think it's something to think about.
Definitely.
However, we have Pfizer data, a preprint. We have Moderna data showing that even the known variants, South Africa, Brazil, are covered although sixfold lower,
Right.
still neutralizing titers are quite good.
Right. So
And-
severe disease probably prevented.
Exactly. That's what I believe will be the case.
Right.
And we shall see. So I'm still optimistic. I have an optimism. But I do note this is what the Wall Street Journal said. I'm pretty sure it's Wall Street Journal. It said, according to a not peer-reviewed preprint, okay, the Pfizer vaccine still has this neutralizing antibody.
Yeah, right.
And then I was like, okay, this not peer-reviewed preprint is by Pfizer, the company that made the vaccine. So you know what's going to happen in peer review? Nothing. It's the Pfizer team. They're really fucking good at this. Can I say that? They're really good at this. They didn't screw up. This is the answer. You don't need to say all that not peer reviewed. That not peer reviewed stuff is for like the academic who's publishing some retrospective chart review paper. It's not for when Pfizer tells you that this is the real thing.
Man, I'm so glad you went off the rails for a second, because I told Marty on the show yesterday, I go, it's fun to get, when you get Vinay riled up by the end of the show, he starts going off the rails, and it's the best thing. That's the best thing. He's just like, Pfizer fucking... And I do the same thing, but I do it from the beginning of the show all the way through.
I got you disinhibited. Well, maybe that tells us we're wrapping up.
No, it's good stuff. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, my point is that, like, you know, they're putting in all these caveats to put in caveats. But the reality is, this is Pfizer telling you this. It's done in their lab. The same people who made the thing work.
Yep.
And for all the faults, I've been the most critical of the industry. These are the sorts of things they tend not to screw up. You know? Okay, they know the stakes.
They know what they're doing. Yeah. Exactly. Awesome, man. Anything else you want to hit?
No, I think we covered all the things that we are safely allowed to talk about.
Oh, man. I'm sure I crossed like 3 or 4 lines. I was like, oh, there's this and there's that, and now I'm going to get canceled again. It's worth it.
I think the less attention paid to people who dislike content, the better. There's plenty of content, and I guess the last thing I'd say is, like, you know, people who don't like my op-ed, people who don't like whatever our point of view is, write your own op-ed. Write your own point of view.
Yeah.
This is a war of ideas.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep fighting my war for whatever ideas I happen to believe in the moment. You fight your war.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I'm going to win.
I'm going to win. Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to win. Yeah.
Because I'm smarter than you. Exactly.
No, I wouldn't say that. I think I have a good reasons for why I believe it.
I mean, if you didn't believe that, you wouldn't take the time to write.
That's it.
Yeah.
The things I'm writing on are things I've thought about, and I have a good reason why I think that way.
That's right. That's right. Now, speaking of good reasons, if you guys don't have good reason to support the show as a subscriber on Facebook, you like how I segued into the pitch?
Yeah, you should.
On Facebook, Locals, or YouTube, then I don't know what is a good reason, but even if you don't have that, just share the show. Leave a comment. Tell us what you think about what we've talked about. Check out Vinay's plenary session podcast, because it's fantastic.
You could be the 4th listener.
The 4th listener. You too could be the 4th listener.
You too could be the 4th listener.
Exactly. And we'll see you next time, brother.
Yeah.
And we out. Peace. Become a subscriber. Click the subscribe button.
Awesome.
Then right to the right of his little bell. Hit that bell. Booyah! You get notifications. Never miss any of our stuff. I love you guys. We out.